Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new to the channel, welcome. And thank you for finding us. I hope this video finds you well. If you are not subscribed, then you could subscribe. It would be much appreciated. Obviously, only if you like Hong Kong cinema, Blu-rays, boutique labels, all the other stuff that we talk about on this channel, but it does really help. We've been growing a lot the past year. It's been freaking incredible to do this channel, and I just love engaging with people in the comments, and it really gives me like a lot of joy in my life to be able to do this and to be able to talk about these movies. Speaking of movies and talking about movies, it's freaking Casino Raiders. Hell yeah. So I watched this movie, I shit you not, like a freaking month ago, and I've been trying to record this video for so long, but stuff just keeps happening. Obviously, it was the holidays of Christmas and New Year and everything, but then like it's been a really insane month in my life, and I finally found time to record my review of Casino Raiders, which I'm really excited to record and to talk to you about. This is a Eureka Entertainment release. This film was originally released in 1989. It actually had a pretty long theatrical run for a Hong Kong film. It was released June 29th and it ran until September 4th of 1989. So it ran for all of July and August, and it made 23 million Hong Kong dollars at the box office. It was released on the 11th of December of 2023 by Eureka Entertainment. This film was co-written and co-directed by Wong Jing and Jimmy Huang Hua Sing. It stars Alan Tam, Andy Lau, Rosamund Kwan, Edie Chan, Eddie Ko is in it. Kirk Wong, the filmmaker, is in this movie. This is the release here, as you can see, and I'm going to give you a little bit of like a plot overview. I will show off this release. I had never seen this film, so this is going to be a movie review. I will tell you what is on here as bonus material, but this is not going to be a Blu-ray review, and that I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details of everything that's on the bonus material and stuff like that. I know I do usually do that kind of thing, but I just haven't had a chance to go through all the bonus material here. I don't want to lie and say that I did and then just like try to bullshit my way through the review, so I thought, let me just talk about the movie, show off the release, because I really wanted to get this recorded before it was like no longer relevant, right? Because I know this release is like whatever, 3 weeks old at this point, 3.5 weeks old, maybe even. But actually, another really interesting thing I found out about after I watched this movie and talked about the release on Twitter is there is a movie called Fatal Bet that was written and directed by the co-writer and director of this, not Wong Jing, the other guy, that is in English, that was filmed concurrently, that is the same story, but it's like a different movie. It's significantly shorter, and the whole thing is on YouTube, and it's not very good. Like I kind of skimmed through it. I didn't watch every single second of it. I would say I took about maybe half an hour kind of skipping through like a 90-minute movie. It's really not very good. And it makes you think like, is the X Factor Wong Jing? Is it that Andy Lau and Alan Tam and Rosamund Kwan and Edie Chan and Eddie Ko, they're like way better as actors than the English language cast? No offense to the English language cast, but they're not freaking Andy Lau and Alan Tam and Rosamund Kwan, right? They're just not. I don't know. I don't know what the X factor is, because there are a number of factors that are different between the films, but the Hong Kong one is like exponentially better. This is a very good movie. Now, what I will tell you before I get deep into showing off the release in my review and stuff like that, this movie is essentially a drama. You can maybe call it a melodrama. You could maybe call it like a kind of romantic tragedy with some dramedy elements, but it's not an action movie. It's not a heroic bloodshed movie. It does have some violence in it, and it has some very satisfying violent scenes, but I would say it's barely even a thriller. It's really more of like this sprawling crime character-driven drama. So, there's the front, and it's long too. Well, okay, let's talk about long. It's 125 minutes, 2 hours and 5 minutes. For a non-Hong Kong film, that might not seem very long, but like, you know, a lot of Hong Kong films from what I consider to be the classic era, which is really 80s and 90s, 80s to mid 90s or whatever, they're usually 90 minutes. Sometimes they push to 100 minutes. Now, obviously, you know, Hard Boiled is a longer film, and so the John Woo films are kind of sometimes longer, but like City on Fire is not that long, is it? And like A Better Tomorrow is like 90 minutes, and I think Wild Search isn't that around 90 minutes, and A Long Arm of the Law is what, like 100 minutes maybe, and like a lot of these movies are not very long, especially like the Jackie Sambo movies tend to be like around 9. Although Police Story 2 is pretty long in the uncut version. But this feels like an epic film, even though it's not very long. Because they managed to cram a lot of story and a lot of passage of time and a lot of characters into the 125-minute runtime. So what you get on here, let me just tell you like the bonus material on here so you know what you're getting into. There's the 1080p presentation on Blu-ray from a restoration from the original film elements. There's the original Cantonese audio with optional English subtitles, brand new feature-length audio commentary by Asian film expert Frank Jeng, Hell to the Yes. I did listen to some of that, but it was like almost a month ago, so I honestly don't remember what Frank said. So I apologize to Frank, but it was a very informative and really interesting commentary track. For whatever reason, I usually take notes when I watch bonus material so that I can report stuff to you. I watched about maybe 40 minutes of the Frank commentary track, but I didn't write anything down for some reason, so I don't remember what he talked about, but it's in classic Frank Jeng fashion. It's a very entertaining and informative commentary track. There's a brand new feature-length commentary track with action cinema experts Mike Leader and Arna Venom, and I'm wondering, did I listen to that one or not? Or am I thinking of another movie? I kind of feel like maybe I did. I mean, this movie was like, this is of the era where Mike Leader like knows all the people involved, and I can't remember if I listened to that commentary track. I honestly can't remember. Apologies to Mike and Arna, but I'm sure that it is a very fun, entertaining, silly, and extremely informative and knowledgeable commentary track, as they always are. And then there's a brand new featurette from Crazy from Kong, looking at the gambling film craze that hit Hong Kong cinema in the late 80s and early 90s. Okay, now that I'm thinking about it, I did actually watch this. It's Mike and Arna sitting at like a poker table, I think, talking about all of these films. This film actually predates God of Gamblers. So they talk about this and like God of Gamblers and all the spin-offs and sequels and all the other similar films that grew out of like this being a huge hit, God of Gamblers being a huge hit. And so that's a really interesting and fun little conversation. And then there's a brand new interview with Billy Chan, and then there's the original theatrical trailer. And then let's open this up and see what we get here. So this is Gokaiju artwork. I really like this artwork. It's like really clean. It's really effective. The way that the characters are arranged, I don't want to spoil anything here, but it does speak to kind of like the themes of the film and the character relationships of the film. And it's really nice to look at when you hold it in your hand. Like the colors are really pleasing, the texture of the image, the composition of it. I just really like it. I mean, it's got the classic movie poster triangle, right? So even if you go back to like the old Star Wars posters and stuff from the 70s, it's got the classic movie poster triangle on it. And like is it Seven Samurai, the original Japanese Seven Samurai poster, where Mifune is like right in the middle holding his sword up, and it creates kind of this like triangle in the middle of the poster. Classic shape for movie posters. So here we have what you see when you open it up. And then it's actually not a reversible cover. It's an image from the film, which is pretty cool. And then you have a booklet here. So booklet. And the essay here is Casino Raiders, Gamblers and Gangsters on and Off the Screen by David West. David West will be no stranger to you if you are a collector of these films. Writes a lot of great essays for the booklets for these especially these Region B releases for these films. And here we go. So let me tell you briefly what this movie is about, and then I'll give you my thoughts on it. So the opening of this movie is really good. Like, it's a really fantastic opening because it gets your attention right away. It's a little bit similar to A Better Tomorrow, not the opening of A Better Tomorrow, but another scene in the film. But the way it opens, you're kind of like, where is this going and what is this about? It's like really well done scene work in the opening with like there's a couple like little reversals and some twists. It's really interesting. But anyway, not to get into the nitty gritty, Andy Lau is getting out of jail, and he's a gambler and like kind of like a low-level criminal type of guy. And he ends up meeting up with Alan Tam, and you find out that they're like old friends. Alan Tam has a new partner he's been working with. And they set Andy Lau up with some money because he's fresh out of jail. He doesn't have anything. And then Andy Lau and Alan Tam get invited to come to the United States where these Japanese criminals have been swindling a casino basically. And so these people have hired them as expert gamblers and kind of like con men, but like, they're like Robin Hood types where they con bad people and they, that kind of thing, right? They swindle the crooks basically. And so they get hired to come and identify these guys. And so there's this really cool, I really like procedural stuff. That's one of the reasons I'm a huge fan of Kurosawa. Kurosawa loved like procedural elements in films. And what specifically I mean by that is like a film or a sequence in a film that details every single element of a process, almost like forensically, right? And there's a scene where Alan Tam and Andy Lau explain how they know who the people are who are swindling the casino and how they're doing it. Very like forensically breaking it down, like video cameras, like zoom in here. It's really cool. And I just like, I'm a really like big nerd for that kind of stuff. So that is a really cool sequence. What ends up happening is, and this is not really a spoiler, this is the kind of the setup of the movie. The bad guys, the Japanese, they're like a kind of like a Yakuza clan. They find out who it is who identified them. And so they're out to get them. And then kind of the rest of the movie takes place over a couple years in the lives of these characters. Maybe it's months. It felt more epic than that to me. Where they kind of diverge in their paths. And all the while kind of this lingering threat in the background of the Japanese coming to get them, right? And the Alan Tam character ends up falling in love, and he wants to get married, and the woman who he wants to marry, her dad owns a company, and he's willing to hire him, but he has to go legit. And there's a kind of very pivotal, essential scene in the film. This is maybe a tiny spoiler. If you're like the kind of person who wants to know literally nothing about a film before you go into it, you might want to skip ahead, like, I don't know, 30 seconds or something like that. But it's not really that much of a spoiler. The Andy Lau character ends up saving the life of the Alan Tam character. And thereafter, their lives go in very different directions. And Andy Lau gets very badly injured. It takes him a while to recover, and he never reaches the heights of success he had previously reached. Whereas the Alan Tam character, who has since gone legit and is getting hired by his father-in-law's company and is getting promoted and doing really well in the corporate world, is doing extremely well for himself. So what this movie, I'm going to get into my thoughts here. What this movie I think does really, really well is to look at really complicated dynamics in a very close friendship that has lasted for decades, and to give you essentially really intense moral conflicts, to make a film that is ultimately about the decisions that people have to make in difficult circumstances and the way they then have to deal with the consequences of those decisions. But there isn't really a bad guy in terms of the Alan Tam, Andy Lau dynamic. Obviously, you have the Yakuza who are like the bad guys, and that's kind of this lingering threat that then ties it's this kind of a classic Hong Kong thing where you set up a threat in the beginning of the film, and then you play out either like a drama or a comedy for much of the central section of the film. And then the way that you push the film towards a conclusion is you bring back in that element, right? So Sammo Hung does that a lot with the structures of his films, where you'll have like an opening action sequence like Pom Pom, where you introduce like the threat of a villain and some kind of procedural or police type of element. But then in Pom Pom, I know that Sammo didn't direct or write, or I think he produced that movie and he was one of the writers on that movie. But the point being, there's then like, 70 minutes of comedy, and then the threat from the beginning comes back and propels the film toward a conclusion, right? This is basically the exact same structure, and you see that a lot in Hong Kong films from this era. So they set up the threat, then you have a lot of drama, melodrama, romance, character relationship type of stuff. And then you bring back the crime element at the end to force the film into a conclusion, essentially, so that there's a natural kind of wrap up of everything rather than it just kind of, very often with dramas, I think one of the hardest things about making dramas, and one of the things that makes great dramas so fucking good, is how do you end a drama without it feeling artificial, because essentially life doesn't end. Right? So how do you find the point at which you're going to leave the characters? Because there's so many questions lingering, right? And people who make great dramas are really fucking good at knowing how to do that. So the thing that's really smart about what Wong Jing and his co-writer and co-director are doing in this film is that they're introducing the crime element so that you have a natural, organic element within the story that forces you to have a conclusion, right? So, but the way that this film looks at the relationship between Andy Lau and Alan Tam and really digs deep into both of their emotions around this kind of, it's not really even a fallout that they have. They just kind of drift from each other because of this central event where Andy Lau saves the life of the Alan Tam character. And in a lesser movie, I think, the Alan Tam character would be a dick to the Andy Lau character. He'd basically be like, "Oh, I can't get back in the mud with you, and like I don't owe you anything." And blah. The Alan Tam character in this is a very sympathetic character, and you can see he has this really intense moral conflict because he's married now and he loves his wife and his life is good and he doesn't want to put his wife in danger by going back into the criminal world and making her a risk in that equation. And yet he knows what he owes to the Andy Lau character. And anyone who has, gotten married or gone off and made other life decisions that take you away from a life you used to have, when you're faced with these difficult decisions, like, that takes precedence because you decided when you marry someone, most people, I would imagine, your attitude is, I have made the active decision to make this my life now, and I am devoted to this, and I'm willing to sacrifice things I previously would not have been willing to sacrifice to make this my life, right? So you understand where Alan Tam is coming from. He doesn't want to put his wife at risk. He doesn't want to risk his relationship with the life he is building, the kind of implicit promises he has made to his wife through the life that he has begun to live, and to his father-in-law who has given him this job, right? So it's almost like this, Giri versus Ninjo. This is this Japanese concept, right? Of like desire versus obligation. It's not exactly the same, but this idea that like he really wants to help Andy Lau, but he has made so many promises, be they explicit or implicit, to his father-in-law, to his wife, to his new life, that he feels bound to keep. So what do, right? It's a really fucking good conflict, and it's played really well in this film. And there's a lot of tragedy in this movie, genuine, very sad tragedy that plays out as a result of these types of irreconcilable conflicts that come up where there's no good decision. So what do you decide? And then what consequences arise from that? And how do you deal with those consequences? And you see very human characters in very difficult situations trying to make really hard decisions. And no matter what they do, they're screwed. And it's just really well done. It's really tremendous drama, whatever you want to call it, melodrama. And that to me is the core of this film and the selling point of this film and what I really related to. But again, I did really love like the procedural gambling elements. I thought that was fascinating. And there are some really good little action set pieces, violent sequences in this film, whatever you want to call them. But to me, what really sells this film, what sets this film apart, which makes this film really, really fascinating and compelling, is the strength of the characters, the strength of the actors, and the strength of the material, the conflicts, the writing. And there's great freaking scene work in this movie. So I think I'm really noticing about Wong Jing is I saw within the last couple months or whatever, I've seen this, The Magic Crystal, Royal Tramp. I watched another Wong Jing movie not that long ago. So I've been watching a fair number of Wong Jing films recently. And I think scene work is something that obviously this is not true of people who are filmmakers, right? Or people who are writers or people who have worked on sets and stuff like that. But to the film fan and to film critics, And, to people like me who I don't know where I exist in between these different worlds of people, right? But I'm not really a film critic. I'm a huge fan of films, but I do review films, and I do have a graduate degree in writing films, and I have been on the set of films, but I'm not a filmmaker. So I'm kind of like this weird nebulous entity, right? But all of the people in this kind of community of people who love films, right? One of the skill sets of a director that I think is essential to making great cinema, that the best directors do so damn well, that does not often get discussed and that people don't often get credit for, is their scene work. And what I mean by that is how you build the scene through the characters, the pacing, the build and release of tension, the way that the scene is designed visually. And there are certain filmmakers. I've actually been rewatching the Lord of the Rings movies recently because I got the Blu-ray set of the extended editions for Christmas this year. Peter Jackson's scene work is fucking incredible. Like, it is incredible. And obviously Spielberg is like one of the masters of this. David Fincher is incredible with scene work. Quentin Tarantino is incredible with scene work. Ringo Lam, I think, is, for me personally, is one of like the great Hong Kong filmmakers for scene work. But obviously Sammo, Jackie, Wong Kar-wai, Wong Kar-wai operates almost in like a different sphere because his films are so unique, But he's incredible with actors and with writing, with material, right? And the way that you use the visual and oral language of cinema to build scenes, sequences, stuff like that. Wong Kar-wai is like transcendently good at that, but he has like his own language almost for doing that. I'm talking more about traditional scene work. But like Ringo Lam is, you look at the details of the scene work in his films, and kind of like there's this really incredible scene in Full Alert where these cops are they're gonna break down the door of this apartment, and the apartment is filled with gas, and one of the detectives is like, the head detective is a Sean Lau character. Is like, well, we can't hit the door with the metal thing to knock the handle off because it might create a spark, which would make the thing blow up. And like, just the details of that level of thought going into the scene. And I interviewed Michael Wong once, who was in 2 Ringo Lam films. He was on, I think, Wild Search and Sky on Fire. And he said that in every scene, Ringo Lam would go around and talk to like every actor and be like, do you know where you are right now, like in the scene, and how you're relating to this person and to that person, even like background actors, and be like, okay, so what's going on with you in this scene is that you're, you have this relationship with this person, and your dynamic with this person is that, and so that's how that's shaping. So I think, from the little anecdotal stuff I've heard, and the way that you can watch the movies and just see it, I think Ringo Lam was just a genius with scene work. I don't know if genius is the right word, but he was just a consummate craftsperson with scene work. And I think that Wong Jing is really, really good with scene work. And the scene work in this scene, or in this film rather, the way that the pacing is built, the way that you have rising tension, reversals, the release of tension, then the build of new tension, another reversal. Like in the opening sequence alone, you've got 3 or 4 reversals of like building tension, the release of tension, and then building tension again, reversal, releasing tension. Like that kind of those subtleties of filmmaking and the craft aspects of filmmaking, Wong Jing handles really, really well. And they're really on. I realized it's like, I thought this was going to be like a 15-minute video, and it's, like we're at 23 minutes now. So I'm going to stop talking. But if you're a John Woo fan, and you just want to see the crazy shootouts, or if you're like an old school martial arts film fan, if you're a Jackie Sammo fan, you just want to see that insane Peking opera style fighting, this is not your movie. It's not. It's really kind of a drama. I think if you love Ringo Lam, like I love Ringo Lam, if you love like Wild Search and City on Fire, and the way that he takes drama, and like at the core, his films are really drama. They're just in worlds of crime. If you like that type of stuff, I think you might really like this film. I think God of Gamblers this movie is not funny like God of Gamblers is funny. It's not like a dramedy type of film the way that movie is. It's a more serious melodrama. Actually, probably the best comparison for films that have come out recently would be Rich and Famous. I think this is a very similar movie to that, in that it plays out over a long period of time and is about like a core emotional relationship between these characters in a world of danger. So it's Casino Raiders. Like I'm obviously, you could probably tell from this review, I thought this was a fantastically well-made film, and it was very enriching for me to watch it. I'm very glad Eureka put it out. I thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.